The transport shuttle's engines hummed as it approached the massive ship floating in space. Kim Hana pressed her face against the small window and looked at the enormous vessel ahead. The Harmony's edge stretched for miles in every direction. Its white metal hull gleamed like a pearl under the light of 3 distant suns. Hana pulled her tool bag closer to her chest. The worn leather strap had been repaired many times with metal wire and fabric patches. Her blue coveralls were clean, but showed years of use. Small burn marks dotted the sleeves. Oil stains had soaked so deep into the fabric that no amount of washing could remove them. The shuttle pilot was a tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms. He glanced back at her through the cockpit door. His large black eyes looked her up and down with obvious disapproval. "You sure you got the right ship, human?" he asked. His voice sounded like gravel in a metal cup. "This is a diplomatic vessel. Very important people work here." Hana held up a data pad that showed her work order. "Quantum drive maintenance contract. I'm supposed to report to engineering deck 7. The pilot made a clicking sound with his tongue. "If you say so. Just try not to embarrass your species too much." The shuttle docked with a soft thump. Hana thanked the pilot and stepped through the airlock into the ship's main corridor. Her heavy work boots made loud sounds on the polished metal floor. The hallway was wider than most streets back on Earth. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling and cast rainbow patterns on the walls. Everything was perfect and clean. Not a single scratch or mark could be seen anywhere. The air smelled like flowers and some kind of expensive soap. Hana had worked on hundreds of ships but never one so fancy. Other passengers from the shuttle walked past her. A group of beings that looked like walking crystals moved in perfect formation. Their bodies caught the light and threw it back in brilliant flashes. They wore robes made of silver fabric that seemed to float around them like liquid metal. One of the crystal beings noticed Hana and stopped walking. It turned to its companions and spoke in a language that sounded like music played on glass instruments. The others looked at Hana and made the same musical sounds. Even without understanding their words, Hana could tell they were not saying nice things about her. A family of insect-like creatures scuttled past on 6 legs each. Their shells were polished to a mirror shine. Tiny jewels were embedded in patterns across their backs. The largest one, probably the father, stopped and stared at Hana with compound eyes that reflected her image 1,000 times. "Disgusting," it said in perfect English. "Humans have no sense of proper appearance. Look at those clothes. She looks like a common laborer." His wife clicked her mandibles in agreement. "On our world, only the lowest class would dare appear in public dressed like that. No wonder their species has such a poor reputation." Their children made chittering sounds that might have been laughter. The family moved on, their jeweled shells glinting as they disappeared around a corner. Hana kept walking. She had heard worse, things said about humans and about her specifically. Words could not hurt her. She had survived much worse than hurt feelings. More groups of aliens filled the corridor. Some looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and silver hair. Others resembled huge bears with extra arms and faces covered in colorful fur. A few seemed to be made entirely of flowing energy that barely held a solid shape. All of them were dressed in expensive clothes, robes, uniforms, formal wear that probably cost more than Hana earned in a year. Jewelry and medals covered their bodies. Some wore crowns or carried ornate staffs that marked them as important officials. Every single one of them stared at Hana as she passed. Some whispered to their companions. Others pointed at her with whatever limbs they had available. A few took pictures with small devices, probably to show their friends back home how poorly humans dressed. "Is that really a human?" one of the blue-skinned aliens asked his friend. "I thought they were supposed to be warriors. This one looks like she cleans toilets for a living." "Maybe she does," his friend replied. "I heard humans will do any job, no matter how dirty or low class. No pride at all." Hana found a wall display that showed a map of the ship. She studied it until she located Engineering Deck 7. The route would take her through 3 more levels of diplomatic areas before she reached the working sections of the ship. She stepped into a lift that was already occupied by a group of the bear-like aliens. They were huge, easily 8 feet tall and covered in thick golden fur. Medals and ribbons decorated military uniforms that looked like they were designed for ceremony rather than actual work. The largest bear alien looked down at Hana with small, dark eyes. "You are in the wrong lift, human. This one goes to the command levels. The service lifts are on the other side of the ship." "I'm going to engineering deck 7, Hana said quietly. "This lift stops there according to the map." The bear alien snorted through his large black nose. "Engineering? You? What could a human possibly know about advanced technology? Our ships ran perfectly fine for thousands of years before your species even learned to make fire." His companions rumbled with laughter. One of them pointed at Hana's tool bag. "Look at that ancient equipment. Those tools probably date back to their Stone Age. No wonder human ships break down so often." The lift stopped at deck 5. The bear aliens pushed past Hana as they got off. One of them made sure to bump her shoulder hard enough to nearly knock her down. They were still laughing as the lift doors closed. 2 more stops brought Hana to engineering deck 7. The diplomatic luxury disappeared as soon as she stepped off the lift. Here, the walls were plain metal painted gray. The lights were bright white and purely functional. The air smelled like machine oil and recycled atmosphere. This felt more like home. Hana walked down the corridor looking for the main engineering office. Her footsteps echoed differently here. The sound was sharper, more honest. No fancy carpets or sound-dampening materials. Just good solid metal under her boots. She found the office and pressed the door chime. A voice from inside told her to enter. Hana stepped through the door and saw her new workplace for the first time. The engineering deck was enormous. Massive machines hummed and sparked behind protective barriers. Displays showed endless streams of data about the ship's systems. The quantum drive core glowed with blue energy at the center of it all. And everywhere she looked, aliens in clean uniforms were staring at her with the same expression she had seen in the corridors above. This was going to be a long job. A tall figure approached Hana from across the engineering deck. The alien had crystal-like skin that caught the light from the quantum core and threw it back in sharp angles. His body was thin and elegant, like a piece of living glass shaped into human form. He wore a pristine white uniform with golden trim that marked him as the chief engineer. "You must be the human contractor," he said. His voice was smooth and musical but cold like winter wind. "I am Kristek Valon, chief engineering officer of this vessel. I was not expecting someone so casual in appearance." Hana set down her tool bag and extended her hand. "Kim Hana, I'm here about the quantum drive maintenance." Valen looked at her outstretched hand for a long moment before barely touching it with 2 fingers. He pulled away quickly and brushed his fingers on his uniform as if cleaning them. "Yes, well, let me be very clear about how things work on my deck," Valen said. He gestured for her to follow him toward a bank of computer displays. "This is not some primitive human vessel held together with metal tape and hope. This is advanced Galactic Alliance technology. Every system is precisely calibrated. Every component is manufactured to exact specifications." They stopped in front of a massive display showing the ship's power flow. Numbers and diagrams covered the screen in patterns that would confuse most people. Hana studied it while Valon continued talking. "I have read reports about human engineering methods," Valon said. "Crude modifications, dangerous shortcuts, repairs that barely function and fall apart after a few months. That will not happen on my ship." 3 other aliens joined them. One looked like a giant mantis with 4 arms and huge compound eyes. Another resembled a walking tree with bark-like skin and leaves growing from his shoulders. The third was covered in blue scales and had a long tail that swished back and forth. "This is the human?" asked the mantis alien. Her voice buzzed like an insect. "She looks even more primitive than I expected." "Her tools are ancient," observed the tree alien. He pointed at Hana's worn leather bag. "Those designs are at least 50 years old. How can she possibly work on modern systems with such outdated equipment?" Valon nodded. "My thoughts exactly, which is why she will start with basic tasks. Cleaning coolant filters, checking fluid levels, simple things that even a human can manage, without causing damage." The scaled alien flicked his tongue and tasted the air. I can smell the oil stains on her clothes from here. What kind of engineer cannot keep herself clean? They all laughed together. The sound was like music, but not the pleasant kind. More like instruments being played badly on purpose. Hana said nothing. She had learned long ago that proving herself with actions worked better than arguing with words. She followed Valan to a maintenance station near the quantum drive core. These are the coolant filters, Valan explained, speaking slowly as if Hana might not understand. They need to be removed, cleaned, and replaced. Even a human should be able to handle this task. Try not to break anything. Hana knelt down and opened her tool bag. The other engineers gathered around to watch. She could hear them whispering about her equipment and her methods. Look at those tools, the Mantis engineer buzzed. They look like they were made in a blacksmith shop. Probably were, replied the tree alien. Humans still use primitive manufacturing techniques. No precision, no elegance. Hana removed the access panel with practiced movements. Her tools might look old, but they fit perfectly and turned smoothly. She had maintained them herself for many years and knew exactly how each one worked. The coolant filter was behind a maze of pipes and cables. Valan expected her to struggle with the tight space and complex layout. Instead, Hana reached in without hesitation and removed the filter in one smooth motion. Lucky guess, Valan muttered. But as Hana examined the filter, her expression changed. She held it up to the light and studied its surface carefully. Then she looked at the pipes it came from. There's a problem here, she said quietly. Valan stepped closer. What kind of problem? The filter looks fine to me. The coolant flow is wrong, Hana explained. She pointed to markings on the filter. See these burn patterns? The coolant is running too hot on the secondary intake. That means there's a leak somewhere in the quantum resonance chamber. The other engineers looked at each other and then burst into laughter. A leak in the quantum chamber? Valan shook his head. Impossible. That system was installed by Galactic Alliance master engineers. It has been inspected and certified. There are no leaks. The burn pattern shows overheating, Hana insisted. If the coolant flow is restricted, the quantum field generators will start to resonate out of sync. That could cause a cascade failure. The Mantis engineer clicked her mandibles dismissively. Humans always see problems that do not exist. It is because they do not understand advanced technology. They assume everything works like their primitive machines. The quantum resonance chamber is sealed, the tree alien added. It is impossible for coolant to leak into it. This human clearly does not know what she is talking about. Valan waved his hand to dismiss the conversation. Enough. Replace the filter and move on to the next task. Stop wasting time with foolish theories. Hana wanted to argue more, but she could see it was useless. She installed a new filter and moved to the next maintenance station. The alien engineers watched her work with smug expressions. Typical human arrogance, Valan said to his team, speaking loudly enough for Hana to hear. They think they can understand our technology better than we do, after working with it for thousands of years. It is almost sad, replied the scaled alien. They try so hard to be relevant, but they will always be the youngest and most primitive species in the galaxy. Hana continued her work in silence. She checked fluid levels and cleaned components while the alien engineers made jokes about human intelligence and abilities. They treated her like a child playing with toys she could not understand. But while they talked and laughed, Hana was learning. She studied every system she touched. She noticed patterns in the wear and stress marks. She memorized the locations of access panels and emergency controls, and she saw more problems. Small things that the alien engineers had missed or ignored. Vibration patterns that indicated loose connections. Wear marks that showed components working outside their normal parameters. Temperature readings that were just slightly off what they should be. The alien engineers saw only what they expected to see. Clean systems working according to specifications. They had become too comfortable with their advanced technology, too confident in their superior knowledge. They did not notice the small signs that something was wrong, signs that Hana recognized. from years of working on ships where a single mistake could mean death for everyone on board. By the end of her first day, Hana had identified 17 different problems that could cause serious failures, but when she tried to report them, Valen dismissed her concerns without even listening. Human paranoia, he told the other engineers after Hana left. They see danger everywhere because their own technology is so unreliable. Tomorrow we will give her even simpler tasks. Perhaps cleaning duties would be more appropriate for her skill level. But as the night shift took over, small warning lights began to appear on the engineering displays. System temperatures rose slightly higher than normal. Efficiency ratings dropped by fractions of a percent. The alien engineers did not notice. The changes were too small to trigger major alarms, too subtle for beings who had grown comfortable with perfection. But the problems were there, growing slowly in the darkness. And only one person on the ship understood what they meant. Hana sat alone in her small quarters that night, eating a simple meal from a food packet. The room was tiny compared to the guest suites used by the diplomatic visitors. A narrow bed, a small desk, and a closet barely large enough for her few belongings. But it was quiet, and she was grateful for the peace. She opened her tool bag and began cleaning her equipment. Each tool was checked carefully and wiped down with an old cloth. This ritual helped her think and remember. The familiar weight of the tools in her hands brought back memories she usually kept buried deep. 20 years ago, Hana had been a different person living a different life. The colony world of New Sol was supposed to be paradise, green valleys filled with crops that fed 3 star systems, cities built around crystal-clear lakes, mountains that reached toward purple skies. Hana's parents owned a small farm outside the main settlement. Her father grew the best rice in the sector. Her mother taught engineering at the local school. Hana was 12 years old and dreamed of becoming a teacher like her mother. She spent her afternoons helping repair farming equipment and learning how machines worked. Her hands were already steady and sure with tools. Her mind grasped complex problems easily. Then the Keth came. Hana had never seen aliens before that day. New Sol was a peaceful world far from the main shipping routes. The colonists had heard stories about hostile species, but those seemed like tales from distant places that could never touch their quiet lives. The Keth ships appeared without warning. Massive black vessels that blotted out the sun. They landed in the farmlands and began destroying everything they found. Buildings collapsed under energy weapons that burned hotter than stars. Crops turned to ash. People ran screaming as creatures in dark armor hunted them through the streets. The Keth looked like giant spiders made of metal and flesh. They moved on 6 legs that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their bodies were covered in armor plates that seemed to absorb light. Multiple eyes glowed red in faces that showed no mercy or emotion. Hana's parents rushed her to the colony's main power station where other families had gathered. The building had thick walls and emergency shields. The colonists hoped they could hide there until help arrived, but help never came. The colony was too far from military bases. By the time rescue ships could reach New Sol, everyone would be dead. The power station became a fortress. The colonists fought with farming tools and hunting weapons against alien technology designed for war. Hana's father led a group of men who tried to hold the main entrance. Her mother worked desperately to keep the generators running and the shields powered. For 3 days, they held out. The Keth attacked again and again, testing the defenses for weak points. Energy blasts shook the building. The air filled with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Children cried in the darkness while adults whispered prayers to gods who seemed very far away. On the 4th day, a Keth energy cannon broke through the outer wall. The explosion killed Hana's father instantly. Shrapnel from the blast caught her mother in the chest and stomach. She died in Hana's arms, blood soaking into the girl's school uniform. The reactor, her mother whispered with her last breath. If it overloads, everyone dies. Promise me you'll stop it, promise me. Hana made the promise, not understanding what it meant. The Keth poured through the broken wall. Their claws clicked on the metal floor as they hunted the remaining colonists. Screams echoed through the corridors. Laser fire lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. But in the chaos, no one noticed one small girl crawling through maintenance shafts toward the reactor core. The power systems were failing. Emergency lights flashed red warnings that filled the tunnels with bloody shadows. The reactor temperature climbed toward dangerous levels. When it reached critical mass, the explosion would vaporize half the continent. Hana had watched her mother work on similar systems dozens of times. She knew which pipes carried coolant and which cables controlled the reaction chambers. Her small hands could reach places an adult could not go. Her quick mind understood the patterns of lights and numbers on the control displays. Working by memory and instinct, 12-year-old Hana began rerouting power and adjusting coolant flows. She bypassed damaged systems and created new pathways for energy to flow safely. When one approach failed, she tried another. The Keth found the main reactor room, but they ignored the small human child working frantically at a maintenance panel. They were looking for adult threats, not a girl covered in grease and tears. For 6 hours, Hana held the reactor together with repairs that should have been impossible. She used spare parts from other machines to replace burned components. She rerouted cooling systems through water pipes and air conditioning ducts. She turned off non-essential systems to reduce the power load. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found a colony in ruins and most of the colonists dead. But they also found the reactor running smoothly and safely. The engineers who examined it could not believe what they saw. The jury-rigged repairs should not have worked. The improvised cooling system defied every rule of proper engineering. But it had saved 3,000 lives. Hana was the only survivor in the power station. She sat next to her parents' bodies, still holding the tools she had used to prevent disaster. The rescue workers found her there, a small girl who had become an engineer in the crucible of war. The military officers who interviewed her could barely believe her story. A 12-year-old child had performed engineering miracles that would challenge experienced professionals. They tested her knowledge and abilities. They studied the repairs she had made. Finally, they offered her a choice. She could go to a safe world and try to live a normal life, or she could join the war effort and help protect other colonies from suffering New Sol's fate. Hana chose war. The next 8 years of her life were spent in training camps and battlefields. She learned to fight with weapons and with her mind. She studied every type of alien technology the military could find. She practiced making repairs under enemy fire and solving problems when failure meant death. Other children her age were attending school and playing games. Hana was learning to sabotage Keth equipment and modify human weapons to work with captured alien power sources. She became an expert at taking apart enemy machines and rebuilding them to serve human needs. The military gave her the best teachers and the most advanced training available, but her real education came from necessity. Every repair she made in Sawindai, combat taught her something new. Every problem she solved under pressure added to her knowledge. By the time she was 20, Hana had become something unique in human history. She was an engineer who could work with any technology from any species. She could fix anything, improve anything, adapt anything to serve human needs. The war ended when she was 21. The Keth were defeated and driven back to their own space. The colonies were safe. The military offered Hana a commission and a chance to help build humanity's peacetime fleet. Instead, she chose to become a civilian contractor. She wanted to work quietly, fixing things and solving problems without glory or recognition. She had seen enough war to last several lifetimes. Now she preferred the simple satisfaction of making broken things work again. But the skills remained. The knowledge gained in battle could not be forgotten. And sometimes when she looked at advanced alien technology, she still saw it through the eyes of a 12-year-old girl who had once held a reactor together with spare parts and determination. Those aliens on the engineering deck thought they knew everything about their perfect systems. They had never had to make those systems work while enemies tried to kill them. They had never learned to see past the surface to understand what really made things function. Hana had. And tomorrow, she would show them what that knowledge could accomplish. The next morning brought new problems to the engineering deck. 3 separate warning lights glowed amber on the main display. System temperatures had risen another 2 degrees during the night. The quantum drive efficiency had dropped by 0.7%. Christek Valen stared at the readings with growing concern. His crystalline features reflected the warning lights in sharp angles of orange and red. These were the exact problems the human had tried to warn him about yesterday. Run a level 3 diagnostic, he ordered his team. Check all primary systems for anomalies. The Mantis engineer worked at her station with 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. All diagnostics show normal operation within acceptable parameters, she reported. These variations are within standard tolerance ranges. Then why are they happening now? Valen demanded. These systems have run perfectly for 2 years. Nothing should have changed. The tree alien checked his instruments carefully. Perhaps the human contractor damaged something yesterday. Her primitive tools might have loosened a connection or contaminated a filter. That must be it, agreed the scaled engineer. Humans always leave problems behind them. We should inspect everything. She touched. Hana arrived for her second day of work just as they were discussing her supposed incompetence. She set down her tool bag and listened to their complaints without saying anything. They blamed her for problems she had tried to prevent. The human returns, Valen said coldly. Your work yesterday seems to have caused some system irregularities. Today you will clean storage areas and organize spare parts. Nothing that requires touching important equipment. Before Hana could respond, the engineering deck's main door opened with a soft hiss. A human in military uniform stepped through. He was middle-aged with gray hair and scars that marked him as a veteran of serious battles. His left arm was clearly artificial, made of metal and plastic that moved like real flesh. A cybernetic implant covered part of his skull. Blue lights, blinking in complex patterns. The alien engineers straightened up immediately. Even they recognized the authority that came with a Terran Defense Corps uniform. The man wore the insignia of a full colonel, which meant he commanded significant respect throughout the galaxy. I am Colonel Park Jinwoo, he announced. His voice carried the quiet confidence of someone used to being obeyed. I'm conducting routine inspections of all human personnel serving on Alliance vessels. Valen stepped forward and gave a formal bow. Welcome to my engineering section, Colonel. I am Chief Engineer Christek Valen. How may we assist you? Park nodded politely, but his attention was already moving around the room. His natural eye and cybernetic implants scanned the various workstations and equipment displays. He was clearly evaluating everything he saw with the practiced gaze of an experienced officer. I understand you have a human contractor working on this deck, Park said. I would like to meet with them as part of my inspection. Of course, Valen replied. He gestured toward Hana with obvious disdain. This is Kim Hana. She's been performing basic maintenance tasks. I'm afraid her work has not been entirely satisfactory. Park turned toward Hana and his expression changed completely. His cybernetic eye zoomed in on something and focused with mechanical precision. Every muscle in his body went rigid. His artificial hand clenched into a fist. He was staring at a small patch on Hana's shoulder. It was faded and worn, barely visible against the blue fabric of her coveralls. Most people would never notice it. But Park saw it clearly and understood exactly what it meant. The patch showed a bird rising from flames. The image was simple but unmistakable to anyone who had served in the Keth War. It was the symbol of the Iron Phoenix Battalion, one of the most elite engineering units in human military history. Park had fought alongside the Iron Phoenix during the final assault on the Keth stronghold at Proxima Station. He had seen them perform miracles under impossible conditions. They were legends among military engineers, stories told in training academies across human space. Only 37 soldiers had ever earned the right to wear that patch. Park knew because he had helped present some of them personally. Most of those brave men and women had died in the war. The few survivors were treated with reverence by every human who understood what they had accomplished. Sergeant Kim, Park said quietly, using her old military rank. His voice carried a tone of deep respect that made the alien engineers look at each other in confusion. Hana looked up at him with eyes that held old pain and older strength. It's just Hana now, Colonel. I left the military life behind. I should have known, Park continued. He stepped closer, his artificial leg clicking softly on the metal floor. When I heard there was a human engineer working on quantum systems, I should have realized who it might be. The aliens watched this exchange with growing bewilderment. Why was this important military officer treating their barely competent contractor with such obvious respect? "I'm sorry, Colonel," Valon interrupted, "but I think there may be some mistake. This woman is just a civilian maintenance worker. She has no special qualifications or achievements." Park turned to look at the Vulcan engineer with an expression that could have frozen plasma. "No special qualifications," he repeated slowly. "Do you know who you are talking about?" "A human contractor of questionable competence," Valon replied, though less confidently than before. Park's cybernetic eye flashed brighter. "This is Sergeant Kim Hana of the Iron Phoenix Battalion. She is the ghost engineer who broke the siege of Titan Base. She designed the quantum disruptor that shattered the Keth defense grid. Her innovation saved more lives than any weapon ever built." The alien engineers stared at Hana as if seeing her for the first time. The Mantis engineer's compound eyes reflected her image thousands of times. The tree alien's leaves rustled with nervous energy. The scaled engineer's tail stopped moving completely. "That's impossible," Valon whispered. "The ghost engineer is a military legend. This woman is just what?" Park demanded. "Just the person who held a reactor core together with spare parts when she was 12 years old? Just the engineer who infiltrated 17 Keth installations and turned their own technology against them? Just the soldier who designed the adaptive shielding that protected the evacuation fleets?" Hana shifted uncomfortably under their stares. "Colonel, that was a long time ago. I'm just a civilian contractor now." "You can never be just anything," Park replied firmly. "What you accomplished during the war changed the course of galactic history. Every human alive today owes their freedom to innovations you created under enemy fire." He turned back to the alien engineers. "Do you want to know why humans dress for function instead of display? Because people like Sergeant Kim taught us that. Survival depends on competence, not appearance. Those work clothes have been to more battlefields than your dress uniforms have seen ceremonies." Valon found his voice again, though it sounded smaller than before. "If she is truly so accomplished, why didn't she tell us? Why accept menial assignments without protest?" Park smiled grimly. "Because real heroes don't need recognition to do their jobs. They fix problems because problems need to be fixed. They save lives because lives need to be saved. They don't do it for glory or praise." He looked at the warning lights flashing on the engineering displays. "I suspect Sergeant Kim has already identified the issues causing these system anomalies. Am I correct?" Hana nodded reluctantly. "The quantum resonance chamber has micro-fractures in the containment field. The coolant flow irregularities I mentioned yesterday are symptoms of a larger problem. If it's not fixed soon, the drive core could suffer a cascade failure." The alien engineers looked at their instruments with new understanding. The small variations they had dismissed as normal were actually signs of impending disaster. Only someone with extensive experience in crisis engineering would have recognized the pattern. "How long do we have?" Park asked. "Maybe 6 hours before. The fractures spread enough to cause a containment breach," Hana replied. 8 hours if we're lucky." Valon's crystalline skin had gone completely pale. A containment breach in the quantum core would destroy the ship and everyone on it. He had been ignoring warnings about the most dangerous possible failure. "What do you need to fix it?" he asked quietly. Hana picked up her tool bag and gave him a small smile. "Access to the quantum chamber and permission to work without interference. This isn't going to be a standard repair procedure." Park nodded approvingly. "Give her whatever she needs and try to learn something while you watch. You're about to see engineering mastery that most species can only dream of achieving." As Hana walked toward the quantum drive core, the alien engineers followed behind her like students trailing after a master teacher. They were beginning to understand that they had been judging a legend by her appearance instead of her abilities. The real work was about to begin. The quantum drive core hummed with dangerous energy as Hana approached the massive chamber. Blue light pulsed through transparent aluminum walls, casting strange shadows across the engineering deck. Warning displays showed temperatures climbing, steadily toward critical levels. Valon and his team gathered around her, no longer treating her like an unwelcome intruder. Their previous arrogance had been replaced by nervous attention. They watched every movement she made as if her hands might perform miracles. The containment field generators are here, here, and here, Hana explained, pointing to 3 massive cylinders arranged around the core. The microfractures are spreading along the quantum matrix. Standard repair procedures won't work because we can't shut down the drive while the ship is in deep space. The Mantis engineer buzzed anxiously. How can you repair something that cannot be turned off? The energy levels would kill anyone who tries to work on it directly. That's why we don't work on it directly, Hana replied. She opened her tool bag and pulled out a device that looked like it had been built from spare parts. Metal pieces were welded together at odd angles. Wires ran between components in patterns that seemed random. We work around it. Valon stared at the device with confusion. What is that contraption? I have never seen anything like it in any engineering manual. Colonel Park stepped closer to examine Hana's creation. His cybernetic eye analyzed its construction, while his natural eye showed deep appreciation. That's a quantum field harmonizer. I saw her build one during the siege of Europa base. It lets you adjust containment fields while they're still active. Impossible, the tree alien protested. Active quantum fields cannot be modified safely. The feedback would destroy any device that tried to interface with them. Hana smiled as she connected cables from her device to access ports around the core chamber. That's true for standard technology. This doesn't work like standard technology. She began activating controls on her improvised device. Lights flashed in sequences that seemed chaotic but followed patterns only she understood. The quantum core's humming changed pitch slightly, like a musical instrument being tuned. During the war, we couldn't always follow proper procedures, Park explained to the amazed aliens. Sometimes you had to fix things while enemies were shooting at you. Sometimes you had to repair critical systems without spare parts or proper tools. Sergeant Kim became the best at improvising solutions that should have been impossible. The scaled engineer watched numbers change on his display screen. The containment field frequencies are shifting. How is she doing that without destabilizing the entire system? Experience, Hana answered simply. Her hands moved across her device's controls with practiced precision. I've done this kind of repair 17 times before. Each situation was different, but the principles are the same. You have to understand how energy wants to flow and guide it instead of fighting it. As she worked, Hana told them about the war they had never experienced. Her voice was calm and steady, but the stories she shared made the alien engineers understand why humans had earned their reputation as warriors. The Keth were different from any enemy the galaxy had faced before, she explained while adjusting quantum frequencies. They didn't just want to conquer territory or steal resources. They wanted to destroy every other intelligent species completely. No negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. The Mantis engineer's compound eyes reflected the blue light from the core. We heard reports about the Keth War, but the details were classified. Most species were told only that humanity had defeated a hostile invasion. It wasn't just an invasion, Park said grimly. It was an extinction campaign. The Keth had already wiped out 12 species before they reached human space. They had weapons and technology that could crack planets and boil away atmospheres. Hana's device beeped softly as quantum field harmonics aligned properly. The dangerous fluctuations in the core began to stabilize, but her work was far from finished. The microfractures still needed to be sealed. How did humans survive when so many others failed? The tree alien asked. We adapted, Hana replied. She pulled out another improvised tool that looked like a combination of scanner and welding torch. Other species tried to fight the Keth with standard tactics and conventional weapons. Humans learned to use Keth technology against them. You captured their equipment? Valon asked. Better than that, Park answered. We improved it. Sergeant Kim was part of a special unit that infiltrated Keth installations. They would study alien systems, understand how they worked, then modify them to serve human needs. Hana began the delicate process of sealing quantum fractures while the drive core remained active. Her improvised scanner showed her exactly where the damage was located. Her modified welding tool could operate in the high-energy environment around the core. The Keth thought their technology was perfect, she continued. They never considered that someone might be able to reverse engineer their quantum disruptors and turn them into defensive shields. They didn't expect humans to modify their power cores to overload in ways that would destroy entire battle fleets. The alien engineers watched in fascination as she worked. Repairs that should have taken days with proper equipment and full shutdowns were being completed in hours, using tools that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard. "Where did you learn to build devices like these?" the scaled engineer asked. "Necessity," Hana answered. "When you're trapped in a burning space station with Keth warriors hunting you, you learn to make tools from whatever materials you can find. When the enemy cuts off your supply lines, you learn to repair critical systems with parts salvaged from wreckage." Colonel Park's artificial hand clenched as memories surfaced. "I was there when she saved the evacuation fleet at Centauri Station. The Keth had surrounded our ships with a quantum disruption field that would have torn them apart. Sergeant Kim built a counterfield generator using components from destroyed fighters and a coffee machine." "A coffee machine?" Valen repeated, in disbelief. "The heating element had the right frequency characteristics," Hana explained matter-of-factly. "Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected sources." Her quantum welder sealed another fracture as she spoke. The containment field grew stronger and more stable. Temperature readings began to drop back toward normal levels. "The thing about human engineering," Park continued, "is that we don't just learn how things are supposed to work. We learn how they actually work. When you understand the real principles behind a technology, you can make it do things its designers never imagined." The final fracture sealed with a flash of blue light. Hana's devices showed all systems returning to stable operation. The quantum drive core hummed with smooth, even power. The warning lights on the main display went dark one by one. "Repair complete," Hana announced. She began disconnecting her improvised tools from the core chamber. The containment field should hold for at least 10 years now, probably longer. The alien engineers stared at their instruments in amazement. Not only had she fixed the immediate problem, but the drive core was now operating more efficiently than it had when first installed. Her modifications had improved performance across all system parameters. "How is it running better than before?" the Mantis engineer asked. "Because the original design had flaws," Hana replied. "Small ones that only become obvious when you see the system fail. I corrected those issues while making the repairs." Valen's crystalline features had changed color several times during the repair process. Now they showed deep blue, which indicated profound respect among his species. "I owe you an apology, Sergeant Kim, and my gratitude. Without your intervention, we would all be dead in a few hours." "Just doing my job," Hana said as she packed her tools away. "Problems need to be fixed. That's what engineers do." But as she prepared to leave, the alien engineers crowded around her with dozens of questions. They wanted to understand her techniques. They begged her to teach them her improvisation methods. They asked for detailed explanations of every modification she had made. For the first time since arriving on the ship, Hana found herself surrounded by beings who treated her knowledge with the respect it deserved. They no longer saw a poorly dressed human contractor. They saw a master engineer whose skills had saved their lives and taught them new possibilities. The reputation that followed humans throughout the galaxy was starting to make sense to them. These beings who dressed for function instead of form had earned their place among the stars through competence and innovation that other species were only beginning to understand. Word of what happened in the engineering deck spread through the Harmony's edge like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every being on the ship had heard about the human contractor who saved them all from certain death. The same aliens who had mocked her appearance now whispered her name with reverence. Hana finished her official repairs by midday, but her work had gone far beyond the basic maintenance contract. While fixing the quantum drive, she had also corrected dozens of smaller problems throughout the ship's systems. Power efficiency had increased by 40%. Navigation sensors were more accurate than ever before. Even the artificial gravity felt smoother and more stable. Captain Theron Vax, a distinguished Altarian with silver skin and flowing robes, requested a formal meeting with her. His office occupied an entire deck near the ship's command center. Ancient artifacts from a dozen worlds decorated the walls. Expensive furniture filled the room with elegant curves and precious metals. Sergeant Kim, the captain said as she entered. He stood and bowed deeply, showing the kind of respect usually reserved for visiting royalty. I cannot adequately express my gratitude for what you have done. My ship and crew owe their lives to your expertise. Hana looked uncomfortable with the formal attention. She wore the same oil-stained coveralls as always, looking completely out of place among the captain's luxury decorations. I was hired to maintain your quantum systems, Captain. That's what I did. You did far more than that, Captain Vax replied. He gestured for her to sit in a chair that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. My engineers tell me you have improved every system you touched. They also tell me you tried to warn them about the problems they were ignoring. The captain's aide, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, placed a datapad on the desk between them. We have prepared a full report of your contributions to ship safety and efficiency. This document will be forwarded to Galactic Alliance, Command, and to your superiors in the Civilian Contracting Authority. That's not necessary, Hana said quietly. I don't need recognition for doing my job. Captain Vax studied her with ancient eyes that had seen many different species and cultures. Colonel Park told me you would say that. He explained that humans often prefer to work without seeking glory or praise, but the galaxy needs to understand what your people are capable of accomplishing. Down in the engineering section, Christek, Valon was having the most humbling experience of his long career. He stood before the quantum drive core that Hana had saved, studying her modifications with instruments that could analyze molecular structures. Every measurement he took revealed new levels of sophisticated engineering that he had never imagined possible. The quantum field harmonics are perfect, he reported to his team. Better than perfect. She has created resonance patterns that amplify efficiency while reducing stress on the containment matrix. According to these readings, this drive core could now operate safely for centuries without major maintenance. The Mantis engineer worked at her station, with all 4 arms moving in rapid coordination. I am analyzing the improvised tools she used. The quantum field harmonizer appears to violate several fundamental laws of physics, but somehow it functions flawlessly. It doesn't violate physical laws, the tree alien corrected. It exploits principles we never learned to recognize. See these frequency modulations? She is using quantum uncertainty itself as a stabilizing force. The random fluctuations that usually cause problems are being channeled to strengthen the system instead. The scaled engineer flicked his tongue and tasted the air around Hana's repair work. The metal composition of her welding joints is unlike anything in our databases. She has somehow created molecular bonds that are stronger than the original materials. Valon set down his instruments and looked at his team with newfound humility. We need to revise everything we think we know about engineering principles. This human has shown us that our understanding is incomplete at best. Throughout the ship, similar conversations were taking place. The diplomatic staff who had sneered at Hana's appearance now asked their assistants to research human technological achievements. They learned about innovations that had revolutionized galactic civilization, quantum communication systems based on human designs, faster-than-light drives using principles discovered by human scientists, defensive technologies that had ended wars and saved countless lives. The Velkan cultural attaché found historical records of the Keth War that had been classified for decades. Reading about humanity's desperate struggle for survival changed his perspective completely. The species he had dismissed as primitive and crude had faced extinction and emerged stronger than ever. They did not just defeat the Keth, he told his staff during an emergency briefing. They absorbed Keth technology and improved upon it. They turned the galaxy's most dangerous enemy into a source of advancement for all species. In her quarters that evening, Hana received dozens of messages from beings throughout the ship. Engineers wanted to study her techniques. Diplomats invited her to formal dinners. Scientists requested permission to analyze her improvised devices. She answered none of them. Instead, she packed her few belongings and prepared for departure. Her contract was complete. Another ship somewhere in the galaxy needed repairs, and she preferred to keep moving rather than become the center of attention. Colonel Park found her in the shuttle bay as she waited for transport. Leaving so soon? I think half the crew wants to offer you permanent positions. That's exactly why I'm leaving, Hana replied with a tired smile. I didn't become a civilian contractor to be famous, I just want to fix things that are broken. The galaxy needs more people like you, Park said seriously. Engineers who care more about solutions than recognition. Leaders who judge others by their abilities instead of their appearance. Hana shouldered her worn tool bag and walked toward the shuttle. As she reached the airlock, she turned back to see dozens of alien crew members lining the corridors. They stood at attention like soldiers honoring a fallen comrade. The same beings who had mocked her clothing now showed her the highest respect their cultures could express. She nodded once, acknowledging their gesture without making a speech or ceremony of it. Then she boarded the shuttle and took her seat, among the cargo containers and supply boxes where she felt most comfortable. As the shuttle pulled away from the Harmony's edge, Hana looked back at the massive ship through a small porthole. Its hull gleamed brighter than before. Its engines burned with cleaner energy. Its systems hummed with new efficiency that would serve its crew for decades to come. 6 months later, reports began circulating through engineering schools across the galaxy. The modifications made to the Harmony's edge by a human contractor had been studied, analyzed, and adopted as new galactic standards. Her quantum field techniques were being taught to the most advanced students. Her improvised repair methods had been integrated into emergency procedures for all Alliance vessels. Ships throughout known space began requesting human engineering consultants. Civilian contractors who had once struggled to find work were now in high demand. The reputation of human technical expertise spread to every corner of civilization. But Hana herself remained unknown to most of the galaxy. She continued working, on one ship at a time, fixing problems and moving on before anyone could make her famous. Her name appeared in classified reports and technical journals, but never in public news feeds or celebrity databases. She preferred it that way. Heroes, who wore work clothes, didn't need recognition to do their jobs. They fixed what was broken because broken things needed to be fixed. They saved lives because lives needed to be saved. They made the galaxy a better place, one repair at a time, carrying tools and knowledge earned through sacrifice and determination. The Harmony's Edge continued its diplomatic missions with systems that worked better than ever before. Its crew told stories about the human engineer who had saved them all while wearing oil-stained coveralls and carrying an ancient tool bag. They learned to judge others by their competence instead of their appearance. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, another ship was having problems with its quantum drive. Another crew was wondering if anyone could help them. Another shuttle was approaching with a passenger who looked like a simple maintenance worker, but carried the knowledge to perform miracles. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. Sometimes the most important people were the ones who looked the least impressive. Sometimes the greatest heroes wore work clothes and got their hands dirty, fixing the machinery that kept civilization running. Sometimes the person who could save everyone was the one that everyone had overlooked.